If Bob Iger had said to you, called you last night and said, I think I'm going to suspend Kimmel because what he did crossed the line and I'm facing all these business pressures, would you have said, no, don't suspend him? Or it's more complicated than that? Or you think suspending him is fully Bob's right?
I could see from another side saying, listen, do not suspend him because we do not want to look like we're buckling to Trump and the pressure. We want to stand up for principle here. And I don't, to be honest, Mark, I'm not that informed in what's going on in that universe. So, yeah, it's a bad look to look like you might have buckled to a chill of free speech coming from the president. So I would defend them if they're standing up against that. But in a different time, just if there was nothing else to worry about, you don't need a guy like that going on the air indulging himself. That's how I feel about it.
Right. And you think they think they'll put him back on, or you think the show's done? What's your gut on that?
My gut, which is not very reliable on this issue, is that they'll put him back on.
Yeah, I'm torn. I think if they don't put him back on, they're going to get a lot of complaints. But show is not doing that well, and he recently mused, maybe he wouldn't sign a new deal. His deal's up relatively soon. So I don't know. I don't know which way we'll go. But I do know, as I mentioned earlier in the program, as Britt Hume said, and I agree with Britt a lot of the time, Disney has the right to take him off, but it's unfortunate that it came only after the FCC basically said, you guys better consider what you do here, and objected to remarks. I don't think having the commissioner of the FCC, fascinating guy, very aggressive guy, I don't think it's great for him to basically be saying, we don't like content and you need to consider your options.
Listen, Disney obviously has the right to do whatever they want. I'm a little corny about this stuff. I feel like, even in my own world, we all have a kind of civic duty to protect the spirit of the Bill of Rights. I've been saying lately that there's kind of like a broken windows erosion, broken windows theory of crime, where the windows break and you get used to it and worse things happen. There's kind of a broken windows type erosion of our respect for free speech and the notion that we're supposed to be able to tolerate hearing things that we don't like. And Disney collapsing at this particular moment is a cost to our society. I'd be happy if they stood up for the principle and even expressed it as a standing for principle, because the principle is very, very important. And Kimmel is really making it difficult for them because he probably does deserve to be let go. That's
because what he said was not a joke; it was a political statement, and one that's offensive to people.
It's not just that it's a political statement. It's just that it's because it's offensive to people, because it's indulging himself. It could have been about something that wasn't political. It's just he could have just gone out there and intentionally not been funny. But the point is that the whole enterprise is based on pleasing an audience, and performers lose sight of that. His job there is to entertain.
Right. But so thinking about your stage here in Gotham City, if a comedian says something super offensive to many, but it was intended to be a joke, it was intended to entertain, is there any line that would be crossed that you'd say, sorry, you're out of here, you can't play my club anymore, as long as it's attempting to be funny? Is there a line?
Well, that's interesting because, and this does apply to Kimmel. So if a comedian does something and it falls flat, the first time, second time, I won't say anything at all, no matter how offensive it is, because usually the comedians self-correct. They realize, that went over like a lead balloon. There have been like a handful of cases where somebody just keeps at it, where I've had conversations with them. I've never had to suspend anybody, but Kimmel, as I kind of glean from this, does not seem to be self-correcting. This has been a problem that's going on. And he seems to be just like doubling down on it in some way. And yeah, by the way, it was a totally unfounded theory. Like, he also looks dumb in a certain way by staking his career, kind of, not his career, but his reputation on an outlandish theory that's going around on, Twitter. There's no evidence for the fact that it was a groyper who killed Charlie Kirk.
Right. One of the things I respect most about you and love most about you as my friend is you're so iconoclastic. You're so open-minded in your thinking. You have no sacred cows on the left or the right. You're just looking for truth and to hold everybody accountable and for consistency and principle. So
You too, Mark. You too.
well,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Thank you. So maybe that's why we get along. So on this general question of is Trump a threat to democracy? Right. In this case, some people say he's a threat to democracy. He's using his handpicked head of the FCC to intimidate Disney. Where are the threats that you see them right now? Are there threats that Donald Trump and his administration are doing things that you say this is a threat to democracy? Is there anything that rises to that level?
I don't see him really as a threat to democracy long term. Two things. I don't think the courts are going to buckle to him when things get really hot. And I see him as a kind of singular, and I have my affections for him in certain issues, but a singular, vulgar, shameless figure who will do things that I do not think it's likely we're going to see from future presidents. I actually think we're going to see a reset. Having said that, in terms of long-term threats to democracy, yes, short-term threat to democracy may be an overblown way of putting it, but short-term, he's using intimidation to get results from government that he's not supposed to be able to get in that way. And it's a very hardball, effective way. And sometimes we may even take the fruits of expediency over principle, like we are happy to see the border crossings go down to almost zero, even if at the same time we're aware that some of the methods that he's using there are over the line, and some of them are intolerable, like sending a guy back to a El Salvadorian prison. So, he's effective in a certain way, and some of the effects are good, but some are eroding in the short term, I think, how the Bill of Rights is supposed to operate. So that's my answer. It's not a clear answer.
What's an example of of that last category of something he's doing that is eroding?
Well, if he's causing self-censorship by a blizzard of lawsuits,
Right.
That's my example. Then he's accomplishing something that the president of the United States is not supposed to be able to accomplish.
Yeah. I was speaking to someone yesterday who's pretty pro-Trump, not anti-Trump for sure, and he was very adamant that what President Trump has done with the going after law firms and going after universities, he was very troubled by that. Did either or both of those two things trouble you?
Absolutely. I don't like to see the president in a peak going after anybody. I mean, the opposite side is true too, which is that these universities been running roughshod over everything, and the hypocrisy has been just absolutely rank. And then they pretend it's free speech when obviously they don't really care about free speech. They would have never allowed, pro-life demonstrations or anti-trans demonstrations. So he's righteous in his anger about certain things, but democracy is supposed to be a slow, creaky process, and he's short-circuiting that, and that's dangerous. And even if you like this particular result, if it were to become normalized, which I don't think it will be, it becomes dangerous.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the comedy racket, the comedy dodge, the business you've done so well in. 3 clubs here in New York, 4th opening soon, a club in Vegas. The clubs here do extremely well. They sell out pretty much every night, 364 days a year. It's quite impressive as a business. Are we in general in the golden age of comedy in terms of the quantity of stuff available, in terms of the quality, or not?
Yeah. We've been in the golden age of comedy now. It's a long golden age. It reminds me of like the late 60s and early 70s in music, where it's just like a perfect storm of tremendous talent. And comedians actually don't become less marketable or less commercial as they get older, so they even have a longer staying power. Rock and roll was always associated with youth.
Right.
And it's just, the average level of the comedian at the Comedy Cellar now, compared to where it was in the 90s, is 3 or 4 times higher than it was. Every single comedian is extremely funny. Whereas in the old days, one comedian would be funny, and it was just normal to see people bombing or struggling and just not that funny. And you have Louis and Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle and Seinfeld and Andrew Schultz and Shane Gillis. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Nate Bargatze, one after another after another.
And does that have something to do with YouTube and the ability of people to break through? Like what's driving the golden age?
I
Just
think
fluke?
Yeah, I think part of it is, in the same way that John Paul, George, and Ringo, met in Liverpool. I think there is a certain fluke to it. I mean, you would know better than me, but there's been these things in literature and in painting. There's certain times that just for some reason everything flourishes, and a collection of the greatest talents ever are just around at the same time, and they spur each other on in some way as well.
Attention, everybody 64 years or older. This is an important announcement. The Department of Justice recently sued 3 major Medicare brokers for claiming they were unbiased while allegedly pushing people into plans that got them the biggest kickbacks. It's true, so many insurance agents, they can't be trusted. But you can't necessarily rely on government resources either. So what to do? Here's what I recommend. I want to tell you about a group called Chapter. Chapter was started by people who went through this experience personally after their own parents were pushed into the wrong Medicare program by an agent who was more focused on commissions than on good care. Chapter has a very simple mission. They want to give every American the honest, straightforward Medicare advice that they need and that they deserve. And here's what makes them different. They're the only Medicare advisor that compares every plan across the country, not just a handful. That saves their clients an average of $1,100 a year. There's really no reason not to call. It's quick, it's easy, and they can review your options in less than 20 minutes. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you that. But if there's a better plan, they'll help you make the switch. This could be the most important call you make this year. Dial pound 250 and say Chapter Medicare to get peace of mind. Again, that's pound 250 and say the words Chapter Medicare.